This is now the fourth week, I think, of our Killing It series, where we're learning how to win at life on purpose, not by accidents, where we can't reproduce it, but we're actually asking ourselves, how do we actually get more successful at life and doing life and that kind of thing. Now, we've been taking a different approach. In the new year, some people just make New Year's resolutions. They pick 3 or 4 things to do without even asking the more important question, which is the question we've been asking, which is, what kind of person do you want to be? Because once you answer that kind of question, then you can start doing things that would take you towards becoming that kind of person. And so we've been using this dichotomy approach to make it really easy for us, so we're making choices that kind of set us on the right path. So the first one was, do you want to be foolish? Do you want to be wise? Okay, so we're going to choose wise. What does that mean? Let's make some good choices in light of that. The next one was moving from a victim to an overcomer. And so if that one resonates with you, and by the way, if you haven't listened to that one, you might want to listen to that one, because that one was a powerful reminder of how to move from seeing yourself and living in that victimhood and moving into the life of an overcomer. Last week, ironically, we talked about it. Eric mentioned this, I think Tom mentioned it, that we moved from being a complainer to being a thanker. And one of the illustrations that I used was, even when I get a migraine, I thank God for the fact that I don't get as many migraines as I used to, and all that. So even in that, there's something to thank God for. Well, this week I had 2. So I was like, now I told them I was going to do it. So yes, God, thank you for this migraine, because So anyways, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about moving from being a doubter to a believer. A doubter to a believer. Now there's 3 things that I want to lay out before I get into the meat of what I'm going to actually teach today. And the first one is that technically speaking, we're all believers. And by this, I don't mean all of us believe in Jesus, or all of us would be saved, like in the traditional sense. What I mean is this: everyone here lives by faith. You do it all day long. Whether you believe in God or not, you're living by faith. Unless you're a mechanic and you do your own work, or you know too much about cars, enough about cars to make me feel like less of a man. If you're not one of those people, if you're just the average, run-of-the-mills kind of person, when you take your car to the mechanic and they tell you what's wrong, and it sounds kind of legit, and then you pay them the money and they say it's fixed, and you drive away and that sound, it's not happening anymore, you're living by faith, that it's actually fixed. Now, I understand, I'm going to get to this a bit later, because sometimes you kind of wonder whether that needed to be fixed. That's a whole other thing. That's the doubt part. But that's an example of living by faith, right? When you do anything on a day-to-day basis, when you pick up the pen and you're expecting it to work, and it doesn't, you're mad. Why? Because you were living by faith in that pen. The pen is supposed to do what a pen is supposed to do. So all of us live by faith all day long. You're a believer. Congratulations, in that sense. The second piece, though, is all of us are also unbelievers, in that sense, right? So there are things that we struggle with. So maybe you're actually the person that takes your car to the mechanic, and you're looking at him kind of sideways the whole time, and you're taking notes, and you're like, I'm going to get a second opinion about that, because you know deep in your heart that most mechanics are out to screw you, and they're out to take money that shouldn't be spent, and they want to fix something that isn't broken, and so you're going to run the diagnostic yourself, and all of that kind of stuff. We've been there, right? So all of us also struggle with belief. Across the board. There are things that we don't find easy to trust. So let's just say right out of the gate, all of us can relate to understanding. You have faith. You live by faith all the time. Just a matter where you put your faith. And the second piece is you also struggle with faith all the time. So everyone in this room is on the same footing in that sense. So no matter whether you're a church person or a Jesus person, just want you to know these are the same building blocks that we're all using here together. Now there's 2 things that I want to add to this picture before I get into the teaching, and that is some presuppositions that I'm using that I would like you to consider as well. Okay? The first one is this: truth is a synonym for reality. Okay? So in fact, if you would look into the Bible and you look into the actual Greek word for truth, it's a synonym for reality. You can use those interchangeably. The dictionary actually talks about it this way too, believe it or not. So there's no such thing actually as your truth and my truth. You have your opinion, You have your perspective that's different than saying that you've got truth and I've got truth. And they can be two different things. Now, never does this become more clear than when we're living in a culture like we're living in right now with, again, the Me Too sort of movement as this explosion in Hollywood is rippling through our society. And there are women all over the map stepping up saying Me Too, and especially like the Henry or Harvey Weinstein kind of stuff that started it all off. Now, can you imagine those women standing up, tears streaming down their faces because of the wreckage of their lives, saying, this man abused me? And can you imagine him saying, well, that's your truth. That's not my truth. Whoa! There's not your truth, my truth. There is the truth. Period. The truth is not actually subject to our belief. The truth is the truth, whether you believe it or not. Somewhere, maybe, in the Arctic, in some little protected bubble, there is a flower blossoming where it shouldn't be blossoming. And whether we believe it or not does not change the fact that it's there. Can we agree on that? If you disagree with this, then let's meet at the back and everyone can watch. We'll do this right now, and I will punch you square in the face. And you go, why'd you do that? I'm like, I didn't do anything. Yes, you did. You hit me. I'm bleeding. That's your truth, not my truth. Let's work this out right now. The truth is absolute. There's not just absolute truth as a kind of truth. It's absolute. It's how it works. Now, we may not always agree on what that is. We may believe different things about it. That does not change the truth. So that's the second thing I want to say. The third one, I'm praying will be game-changing for you this morning. And I pray that this changes the way you see belief and doubt forever. That's how ambitious I'm going to be with this statement, okay? So you ready for this third one? Doubt isn't a lack of belief. It's the instability created by conflicting beliefs. When we think of doubt, our minds kind of build this picture, you know, like when you go to the fair and there's that thing you can spend $65 on for one swing of the hammer. Remember that? You know that thing? And you're supposed to smash that pad and you're trying to get the little thing to go up and ring the bell. And you think this is how we view faith. Like you got to hit it harder to ring the bell. And if I didn't hit it hard enough, didn't quite get there, that little gap there, that's doubt, right? Like, so this is how much I believe, this is how much I doubt. And so we're trying to work up the faith to conquer our doubt. We think what I need is stronger faith. Whereas Jesus says, no, man, all you need is like a mustard seed. If you had that much, you could move a mountain. It's not about how much. It's like, do you believe or don't you? The thing about doubt is, it's not the absence of belief. It's the presence of a secondary belief that is in conflict with the first belief. So here's one. Many of you in this room would say, God is a good father. I believe that. You say that. You say, God provides. I believe that. Absolutely. And then you lose your job. And you don't stop believing that God is a good father and that he provides, but part of you also believes that you're going to go hungry. And those beliefs actually occupy the same territory. And that town's only big enough for the one of us. And so that dissonance, that instability created by the conflict, that's what we call doubt. So whenever you doubt something, what you're actually needing to do is figure out, what else am I believing? Not just what am I not believing strong enough, what else am I believing that is in conflict with what I'm trying to hang on to? That's a fundamentally different picture. It changes the way you approach all of this. Now, the scriptures actually talk about belief and faith and doubt this way. Look, James, brother of Jesus, puts it this way. He says, you must believe and not doubt. Now, what does that mean? Watch how he unpacks it. Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. Can I get a witness, right? Like this is, when you're doubting, you feel it. You're like, on one hand, I believe this. On the other hand, I believe that. And you find, depending on how your circumstances are going, you're like, back and forth. It's very disorienting, right? That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Why? Because the Lord works through our faith. And we're like this moving target. I believe, I don't believe, I don't believe it. He's like, just hold still, right? Like, I want to give you this, I want to help you, but you keep vacillating, right? Such a person, look at this, is double-minded, two opinions. On one hand, I believe this, on the other hand, I believe that, and unstable in all they do. Who wants to be a doubter? On one hand, we say this. We say that doubt is a healthy thing. I don't think doubt is a healthy thing. I think questions are a healthy thing. Questions are healthy. Doubt is not healthy. Doubt is actually a symptom that things are in conflict and it needs to be resolved by asking questions. Questions are good. Doubt is actually paralyzing. It's unstable. It helps you, it prevents you from moving forward. Now, just picture this. Picture in your mind the most successful people you know. Picture some of the heroes, maybe, of our culture. Let's talk about, I know he's deceased now, but Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, right? Mother Teresa. Are these people that are known for their doubt and their instability? These are people with a single-minded passion and vision who actually are so laser-focused on that belief, whether it's right or wrong, that they push through all obstacles and end up changing the world. We all know deep down that it's conviction, it's belief, not doubt, that takes us where we want to go. Questions are good because they help us clarify what we believe, but doubt paralyzes. So we're going to talk about how to move today from doubter to believer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out, using this stuff here, I'm going to lay out kind of a biblical way, or the way the Bible would say you can build up your faith. And as I'm building this picture, I'm really excited to share this with you. I also want to show you how doubt fits in that picture and how to deal with it. Right? Sound like a good idea? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this. This board, throughout the illustration, is going to represent what is settled in your mind and heart. Okay? So when we lay this board down, what we're saying is everything beneath this is settled. Everything up in front of here, or many things above this, are up for grabs. I'm not quite convinced. All right? So this is what this one's going to symbolize. And this is where the Bible starts. Okay? So look at this. It talks in the book of Hebrews. It's called the faith chapter, the hall of faith. It says this. This is where it starts. Believe that God exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So what it's saying is that God, I'm going to put this here just for now. God exists, and he rewards those who seek him, which implies all kinds of things. We're not alone in the universe. There is a God, and the reward part implies that he's worth it. Whatever he represents, however he works, figuring that out is worth it. That's the Bible would say that is the bedrock for faith. Once you get that, you can start building on it. Now, I also need to point out, and the reason I was so quick to lay this down, because you might be an atheist this morning, you might be wrestling, is there even a God, all this stuff. Well, what we also need to acknowledge is that 99.99% of everyone who's ever lived actually believes this. That doesn't automatically mean they're right, but it means you're in good company if you believe this, right? So there are good reasons to believe this. Cultures of different eras and times, they've all kind of agreed there is a God out there somewhere, or some sort of God-like kind of arrangement, and however that works, that's the meaning of life. It's worth understanding who that is or what that is. That's where we build. Now, this is where the religions of the world fit, in other words. They would kind of all fit into this block. So Judaism, the Bible's religion, the one that Christianity's built on, is one of these religions. God's out there. He's actually, it kind of clarifies it. He's more involved in our lives, and he wants something for us, and following him is worth it. The flip side of the reward is that there's consequences for not following him and not taking him seriously. But many other religions, Islam could be in this box, all kinds of things could be in this box. But the Bible, of course, doesn't stop with this box. The Bible would say, look, if you want to build your faith, that's what this scripture's saying, You lay this card, the what's settled board, whatever, this foundation on this. Let's build on this idea. So just for the sake of argument today, I'm not going to spend lots of time under here. I'm just going to assume, again, because most people of all time have believed this, or some version of it, we're just going to put our board there. Now, what happens in the New Testament is that Jesus arrives on the scene, right? Jesus arrives on the scene, and he adds a block, a significant block, to this foundation. Now notice that Jesus doesn't spend lots of time arguing whether this is real. He actually just kind of assumes that his listeners, the people who are hearing him, they understand this, they get this. He doesn't spend time talking about the reasons for God and all that kind of stuff. He just kind of assumes this. I know we're living in kind of a different culture today, but here's how Jesus leads his movement. He clears his throat very near the beginning, and he says this: the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe the good news. And then a verse later, or two verses later, he says, follow me. Okay, let me just unpack this. I know I've used this verse quite a few times in different contexts, but let me unpack this. He's saying, this foundation that you've built on, let me give you some incredible clarity and some incredible good news. See, God is in the process of building and manifesting a kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. That's what he's up to. But he says, trust me, what this represents and what this means for your life is so radical that you can't just add it to your list of beliefs. You're going to have to repent in order to believe what I'm going to lay on that foundation. In other words, he's saying some beliefs need to be replaced. This is huge. This is really important because we kind of take a salad bar approach to our belief in North America. We kind of walk down the supermarket aisle and we got this basket, like, ooh, I like that one. Ooh, Brussels sprouts. And we kind of go down the aisle and we pick the things that we like. And we add them into this basket. It was funny taking, Tom and Shauna and I once went to, I think, what is it called, the ice cream place? Tutti Frutti, where we got all these choices, and Tom was just like, oh, this is heaven. And he started spooning things onto this ice cream horrific. Like by the end, there were all kinds of things that did not belong together in this ice cream. And he's like, ew, like I don't like Tutti Frutti. Well, if you hadn't, next time we're gonna put you on a budget. We're gonna, but this is how we handle faith. So we walk through life, and this is true. You're scanning your news feed day after day. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. Without even wrestling with the fact that some of the things that you say you like are in direct conflict with each other. They occupy the same space, and you can't actually believe both of them. So what we're doing is we're creating a recipe for doubt in our lives. Jesus says, if you want in on my kingdom, you can't just add this to what you already know. This is important, but if you want to come to the place where this is settled, you have to repent before you can believe. Repent simply means a change of heart and mind. It leads to radical changes in my orientation towards God and sin and my life and the purpose of life and all of that. But the core of the word means to have a change of heart and mind. He says you cannot grasp hold of this without a change of mind and heart. Now, how does that happen? He says, well, you're going to have to follow me. This doesn't happen all at one time. Yes, there's a yes, okay, I'm going to trust Jesus enough. But this is what the disciples did. This is really interesting. Has it ever occurred to you that when Jesus called his disciples, the original 12 guys, and then there's some ladies that started following and stuff, has it ever occurred to you that when he called them, they didn't believe in him? They had no idea who he was, really. He was making some claims. He was teaching some stuff. But when he called them, they found him intriguing, but they were down here. They were not up here. So they follow him around, and they're listening to him teach, and they're like, dude, that's really harsh. And they're reacting to some things, and it's stirring them up. It's triggering them in different ways. And they're like, I don't know. This is really radical. And he's engaging them, right? So he invites them on this process. I want you to consider what I have to say. But he doesn't just say stuff. He does stuff. And this is where the game really starts to change for these guys. See, because he says, hey, blessed are the poor in spirit. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know if that's, I don't like that. I want to be confident. I want to feel like I'm top of the world. And then, dude walks on water. What? And then there's a guy who's demon possessed and comes out of him. Then he cleanses the leper, and he raises the dead, and he makes the blind see, and he opens deaf ears, and the lame are walking and jumping and running around, and suddenly, what he's saying is seen in a whole different light. Has it ever occurred to you, Jesus never for a moment just expected people to listen to what he said, period? Why did he combine it with all those miracles? Because he's trying to show them that I don't just say stuff, I do stuff. This isn't just the description of life, this truth. This is actually how reality works. Truth and reality, these aren't just opinions. I'm showing you reality, a new reality. Again, so mind-bending that you need to repent in order to believe it. Oh. And then, one day, stuff goes sideways. And this guy that they were starting to believe in, they're like, I think this is the guy. I think he's the one. And then he dies, and the whole thing's in question. They're like, I don't know now. Like, if he is who he says he is, how can it be over? Like, I thought this was supposed to, he used like words like eternal, and so now I'm questioning everything he says. But of course, 3 days later, their minds change forever. And they never go back. Because he rises from the dead. Rises right up out of the tomb. The stone is rolled away, walks out, and now suddenly all of their doubts, all of their questions are moot. They don't matter anymore. Dude raised from the dead. How is this even possible? This was the game changer for them. The moment that this happened, they went, you know what? I'm in. Someone can predict that they're going to be, put into, jail and then tortured and then crucified and then how many days they're going to stay dead and then rise from the dead. I think I can trust what he says. I think I can trust whatever he says. There's lots of verses in the New Testament where the disciples, they're writing their own story, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Where they get to this point, they're like, oh, after he was risen from the dead, then they remembered his words. Oh, right. Now it's clicking. This is the message. The resurrection is the message that these guys took and ran across the known world with. They were like, okay, there's this guy, and he was teaching stuff, and he was doing stuff, and it was crazy, and then he died, and maybe you heard about that, and he rose from the dead. That was the crux of their message. So much so that the Apostle Paul, near the end of his life, he's on trial. I think it was Agrippa or Felix, one of the Roman, higher ups in the Roman Empire. And he says boldly, he says, let it be known that it's the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial today. This is what I hang my life on. And here's the reason why. Again, if Jesus rose from the dead, we can trust what he said. And one of the things he said is, there's a God out there, and he's worth taking seriously. The entire thing is validated or not on the resurrection, which the Apostle Paul, one of the early followers of Jesus, also said. He said, look, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, none of this matters. Like, why are you even coming to church? Why are you doing this? Why are you, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. Then we're back to which religion, because we kind of still believe in God. Which religion should we try? I don't know. Should we try a different religion? Should we, maybe Sikhism? Should we, then we're back to this. But if Jesus actually rose from the dead, why on earth would you put this settled piece anywhere else but here? Because he proved it. See, the resurrection, it proves everything, it validates everything beneath it, and it actually validates everything above it. So if you're doubting Christianity today, if you're trying to figure out whether Jesus is who he says he is, Yes, read and understand his teaching. Yes, trying to wrestle with, is there a God, and the arguments for and against, and what about suffering and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, this is where you need to focus your attention. Because if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you have your answer. If he did, it's just the beginning. And this is what the disciples actually were willing to die for. These guys that were like, I don't know. They died for this, most of them. That's what we're going to build on. So, let's see. Right, back to this statement, the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe the good news. Follow me. That's why. He wanted to show them this. Jesus said, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. Capital L, capital T, capital W. That's pretty audacious. That's pretty crazy. In fact, that is insane if this isn't true. Let me tell you something. If the resurrection didn't happen, you should not follow a guy that claims to be the way, the truth, and the life. You should run, not walk, in the other direction. But if he rose from the dead, again, totally different story. Totally different story. So the question is, how do you figure out if Jesus is who he says he is? You focus your attention here. There are books you can read, but there are all kinds of incredible stories in the scriptures that talk about the resurrection of the dead. But again, Jesus doesn't just expect you to believe just because someone said so. So throughout the ages, there are all kinds of stories of lives transformed and people getting out of wheelchairs and all kinds of things still happening because Jesus is risen from the dead. He is. In fact, he encourages us to figure this out. One of his own disciples, Thomas, right? Thomas, the doubting Thomas, maybe you've heard that phrase. Well, that's where that comes from. Yep, that comes from him. One of those 12 guys, they came back and they're like, he rose from the dead, it's the craziest thing, you got it. And he's like, I don't know. He actually says, he's the scientist, right? Unless I actually put my finger in his side and test the wounds, like I don't think, Jesus is like, it's on. So he shows up and walks through a wall, like when they're in this closed room. He goes, hey, have at her. Oh no, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And even for Thomas, from that moment on, once he understood that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, I'm sold. I'm in. Now, what's supposed to happen is that faith in Christ is supposed to produce something in us. It's supposed to have an effect on us. Faith in all of this is supposed to produce peace in our life, rest in our life, a sense that I belong, that I'm forgiven, that I'm free, that I have a mission, that I'm secure, all of these things. What we're supposed to happen, if we truly believe in everything Jesus did on that cross and coming out of that tomb, we should be able to put the settled peace right here and live here. And then knowing that I'm okay, that I'm secure, that I'm loved, then I can take risks of faith, right? Then I can step out and I can tell people about Jesus. I can pray for sick. We just prayed for a guy who was here today. Walked in with a severe limp, and I don't think God healed him, but I was like, I took a risk. Why did I take the risk? Because I am so convinced of all of these things. I'm not convinced of myself. I'm convinced Jesus is who he says he is. It's awesome. This is how this is supposed to work. In other words, the risk part is the obedience part. If you're finding yourself struggling with obedience, it's because you're not able to rest here, right? Like somehow something is disconnected. Now, let me just show you how doubt fits in this picture. There's one last thing. I've got this rock here. It's going to represent like the rock in your shoe, the doubt, the nagging thing that will not go away. Now, I just want to assume, just for a minute, that some of you here this morning you're experiencing pain. You're experiencing doubt in your life. And you viewed it as, I just need to work up more faith. Or it feels like my faith meter is waning and I'm losing faith. No, there's the presence of a secondary belief that's causing conflict that we need to identify. So that's this. That conflicting belief is represented by this rock. Whatever that is. Okay, so a couple of summers ago, Shauna and I are in Winnipeg with our kids. And many of you have heard this story. Our youngest, Joel's on a longboard, slips, smashes his head, goes into seizes up, can't speak, he's taken away by an ambulance. We don't know what is going on. In the days that follow, his speech comes back. It's still kind of garbled, it's slurred. We're not sure if we're ever going to get Joel back the way we know Joel. So on one hand, I believe there's this good Father who loves me, and I can rest on the fact that Jesus died for Joel and died for me and resurrected from the dead, which means he's conqueror over all of this. He can heal Joel, but even if he doesn't, Joel belongs to him. He's going to go to heaven. All of these things, I can say I believe it. But part of me goes, but God, why aren't you healing Joel? Why did you let this happen to Joel, right? Here's the question. Where does this belong in this picture? Remember, truth isn't just your truth, it's truth. Not just true for you or false for you. Truth is truth. Here's what happens to lots of people. Something horrific like that happens. Maybe, what if Joel died? Don't even want to consider, but what if he did? What some people do is say this, you know what? How could there even be a God? And now the entire thing, look at this, is unstable because of that one little rock. Isn't this what James said? The double-minded man, unstable in all he does. But here's the thing. Does it belong down there? Does my experience with Joel undermine the entire human experiment for everyone? Really, am I all that? Is my experience of disequilibrium with God, does that cast all of humanity under the same? Because it's not just my truth, it's the truth. Can't. It can't. So it does not belong here. Does it mean that what Jesus said is not true? Again, for anyone, anywhere. Now, the whole thing, I should doubt the whole thing. No. How could I say that? I'm not all that, right? Does it mean that Jesus didn't rise from the dead? No. What's happening is I'm not able to rest somehow in the resurrection. That's where it is. I'm experiencing this disequilibrium here, this lack of stability, and rightly so. There's some really hard stuff that I've dealt with, but let's be honest about where it belongs. Does this make sense? So what's happening is there's a disconnect. I've got a secondary belief that's preventing me from connecting with and receiving peace from the things Jesus has already done and accomplished and settled. That's the issue. Now, I don't want to get into today what is this issue and how do you... That's a secondary piece. I just want to show you what it is and what we're dealing with here. Some of you, you're like, you're okay. You're fine there. But you really have problems here. Following through. You have problems being generous, giving money away instead of keeping it because you want to. You know you're supposed to obey. You know you're supposed to do it, but you're afraid of where that'll leave you financially, right? You're afraid of opening your mouth and sharing Christ with a coworker because what'll happen or what happens when you pray with someone. Let's be honest about what's happening. It's here. The question is, has Jesus done anything or not done anything to warrant this instability? Now, it's true, okay? So all analogies break down at some point. So what might be true is that my picture of God is off somehow, and then I'm building on a bad foundation. I'm not truly understanding the teachings of Jesus or what his resurrection and death and all that truly represents. Yes, I understand. That's where it could be. But in terms of what Jesus has settled, I want to tell you that no matter what happens to me, I find myself settled here. Not because I'm awesome, not because I'm some super spiritual believer, but I never question whether God's real. This last week, when I had 2 migraines, and some of them just threw me for a massive loop, and I struggled even to get this message together, I never once said, well, I guess God isn't a God of love. I guess what Jesus said is just bunk. I guess the resurrection doesn't really mean anything. No, it's here. What's happening is I'm having some issues now resting on that. That does not change who God is. This can set you free. Because you know what we think? We think faith, and this is how it's depicted in our culture, we think faith is a house of cards. And that you remove one card, the whole thing goes, and it just collapses. Can you see how ridiculous that is? Can't be true. Which means I have the freedom now. This is why I have a question mark on it. You can't see it. I can ask questions about this. I don't get that. Why would you say I have to do that? How come I'm still anxious? How come I still got headaches this week? And sometimes it didn't. Yes, absolutely. Ask questions. Ask questions about this and study and grow. It doesn't mean the whole thing is shaky. No one is moving. Does this make sense at all? Nodding, nothing. Walk out, storm, go. Can't believe this guy. It's something. Thank you. Back to what James said, and then we'll close. You must believe and not doubt. Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person shouldn't expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. And then the message I want to share with you today is, again, based on some of the things we talked about from the beginning. You've already got faith. You believe in something. The language the scriptures often use is, are you going to put that faith in yourself? Are you going to put it in money? Are you going to put it in your own abilities? Or are you going to put your faith in Jesus? Here. So that no matter what goes topsy-turvy, you at least have this foundation settled from now on.